All right, good evening. I'm going to give a chance for some people to come in. Sorry to go live so late. Is anybody up? Hi, good evening. It's Tam Behind the Mic. Thought I had one person that came in to my live, but you done went. Well, hopefully you letting other people know that I'm live. Yeah, there's a lot going on, I tell you. With the Diddy trial, still people are on Angie Stone, not giving her children the opportunity to handle and deal with their mother's death and their loss the way they want to. And people are steady pointing fingers, and 3 fingers is pointing back at them. But I came on this live because I attended Prince's welcome home party from Supreme Team. And I just wanted to kick it with you all, my synopsis and how I feel, and yeah, and the good time that I had. Let me see. Screen. I'm trying to, okay, fix my backdrop. And maybe somebody will come in. Sorry to come so late. Yeah. Oh, this is when my screenshot, I guess, was processing. It had a problem processing. And then eventually it did. But anyway, it was when the stars realigned in Queens at Amadeus. This is your host. I'm Tam Behind the Mic. I'm a hip-hop pioneer from Queens. I'm also a mother that lost her child. And I'm a survivor. I'm a survivor of SA. I'm a survivor of betrayal. I'm a survivor of a broken system. The whole gamut. But what I want to discuss tonight is that I was born and raised in Queens. And how I know the team. And, you know, I've been listening to certain people's commentary. And I just wanted to give my take on Prince and Supreme. They're older than me, but how I know the team is from rapping in Queens early on. There's a lot of debates. Yeah, hit the like button, because I need people to come in. And I got injured some years ago. I've had my heart ripped out because I lost my daughter. And in fact, the last time that I saw Black Just, Supreme, Prince came home. I think I had said Supreme, but I didn't mean Supreme. I had submit Prince and Shorty Black, and even Bimmy. I know Bimmy from St. Albans because I grew up over there in that area, and I know his sister and the whole gamut. But I don't get into that kind of stuff. But my thing is, I was temporarily displaced because I was one of those children that was neglected, and due to certain circumstances at home, I left home at 13. So I was like basically raised in the streets, but not in the streets. I had a cousin that was part of the Seven Crowns. That's how I know about the Seven Crowns early on. 164th Street, 107. His name was Jamaica, and he was my protector and my cousin Honcho. So a lot of people say, "Oh, how was she into hip hop?" And she was too young. I had older friends, or I had friends that had older siblings, and I had older cousins. And even though I had other siblings, they were raised down south, and I was raised in Queens. And been through a lot. That's like for another time that I'll get into my story. But however, we had a great time. I know I had a great time because I very seldom get a chance to get out. It took me like 2 or 3 days to kind of recover. And then I was kept going. I got a chance to see my old hip hop partner, Silk, because I was with the group Silk and Lace. I was brought in to replace the first Lace, and I was the second one. And we practiced, we vibed, we did a show. Oh, it was just a lot. And I can get into the Diddy part a little later. But yeah, it was a busy weekend, so I was exhausted. But Friday, I felt so good. It was like a highlight, even though one of my narcissists was there. But I don't let people steal my joy. At 60 years old, like, we blessed to be here, really. And I'm glad that, Prince had a nice party and that there was no incidents, and, you know, Beamy didn't show up. But again, that's for them to work out. I love them both, you know, and I've never had any problems with them. They were my protectors. The clan was my protectors. I ran into the guy that was on me that always protected me. And, I had to tell him, there's some things going on, and like I lost my daughter. But the last time I saw everybody, it was like Baisley had changed, Roy Wilkins Park, and I had gotten settled in the Bronx. I've lived all over the place. And I had my daughter, the one that passed away some years ago at 30. And it was like my neighborhood embraced me again. Because, like I said, I was one of the first female MCs to be doing it. Erica Ford to tell you, um, T Spunk, so many other people. There's people that's still alive that remember. And they made sure I was good. They was like, "Wow, you had a baby," and my daughter was beautiful, the one that passed. And, I sat behind the ropes. I forgot who was performing, but I know they had the Trans Ams, the cars, and everybody was clean, but they were clean before all of that. So I never really engaged into all of the stuff. I had a friend that was up close and personal, and was doing things with the team. She was from St. Albans. Her name is Cricket. And now she's taking her shahada, so she's living a different life, and I'm glad that she survived. But I was a lot different. In fact, she invited me to the frenemy that I should have never been involved. That's stories that I'm gonna go into later on, because you think somebody's your friend, and they jealous, and they're your worst damn nightmare, really. So I had to learn a lot of self-control, because what I've been through, I tell you, baby. And if they would have known, a lot of things could have happened, but it is what it is. But I mean, seeing like everybody that did survive that era, and how good everybody looked. They was in their suits. It was very a mature crowd. They had some younger crowd, but everybody knew how to act. There was a lot. The security was heavy and it was tight. Also, there was police outside in the venue, and I knew a lot of people that remembered me, and a lot of them were guys because when I was younger and I was MCing, even as a teenager, because I started out 10 and a half, 11 years old. They don't want to put that in history because they keep saying the Bronx, but you wasn't there. And I have the same argument, like Queens, you wasn't there. You understand? Like we kind of combined with the Bronx later on. And as I've done my research and my own personal experience, because I was here, there, everywhere, right? Um, Everybody was doing their own thing, really. Like Brian Glaze said, you couldn't come in Brooklyn. Even though he had a tight relationship with Cat, and I was more closer with Cat because my cousin was one of the crowns, and I knew some of the royal crowns who was older than me. And another of my male MC partner was one of Cat's family members, Crazy T, but his name was Brett Tolliver. And his sisters was in the royal crowns. So it's a lot of history that people sleep on me knowing and being at my cousin's house a lot on 164th Street. And then when they moved over there, 107th, yep, and Lakewood. And then they was over there by Liberty Park, not too far. There was a lot of different things that went on. And I always say, and like, look, I started rapping in South Jamaica, Lincoln Park, Ajax Park, um, Lincoln, Ajax, Van Wyck, when I was staying in the children's shelter over there on Union Hall Street. They were housing all the children in all the 5 boroughs. And that was when I was about 13. And that's when I made it up to the Bronx. But I never went to Bronx River. It was over there in Rosedale Park with Disco King Mario. And Little Man and what's his name? Howie and Rodney brought me up there to the Bronx to Rosedale. And I rocked that day, turned the park out. And that was that. And even in Harlem. So, because we was like bad kids, had went through stuff in our home life. And so we was running rampant. But we had rapping. It wasn't called hip hop then. We were jamming. And it was a different time and it was a different culture. So when people say quiet Queens, I'm always saying Queens wasn't quiet. I don't even know if they get it because Run and DMC, and JMJ, but JMJ, he was about that life. He was on chill, but I rocked with him when he was called Majestic. And D from DMC, he used to DJ for me in junior high school because I got kicked out of IS 238 into 192 because I was doing something that other people weren't doing. In fact, myself, Cricket, and somebody else, we performed in a talent show, and I came out rapping first off of Boogie Nights. Yeah, Boogie Nights. So, yeah, and D admitted to DJing for me, but however, Smitty did it before him, which is Smith, who's in their documentary. But however, they never talk about, they speak about solo sounds because Davey DMX was able to make it to the other, to go commercial. And I missed all of that. I was staying, eventually I got kicked out the group home. From the kids shelter, I went to the group home, and we was going to all the jams all over the place, even in the kids shelter, because they were dragging me all over the place because I was a rare female, rapping off the dome. And I wrote the intros, but then I would rap off the dome. And the same thing in Basie Park. Grandmaster Vic was there. It was great to see Vic and so many different people, and Nas and T Spunk, and Melly Mel came through. And I like Melly Mel and his performances. I think he's a little egocentric, and he's the one that keeps saying, "But you wasn't there." But no, you wasn't here. You wasn't here in Queens. Certain places like Southside during that time when I was 13, you couldn't come in South Jamaica, Queens. It just wasn't like that. And they weren't in 150 Park and 48 Park. I was. So you can't tell me I'm discredited. And then, the guys that I've eventually met when I was in the kids' shelter, oh, that was the worst thing possible. They were into that Diddy crap. I don't know if it was the same thing, but I know certain things what happened with me is very similarity. So people are judging Cassie, and they shouldn't, because people hold on to trauma and they deal with things differently. And when you groomed and manipulated, they do that on a high level. And before you know it, you always thinking about that individual when he was nice. And it's like an addict that's searching for that first hit, but they never get it. So they steady turning, tearing itself up, self-loathing and destruction, because they still seeking something that they saw. Me, I want to see the best in everybody, but that's like looking out of glasses, rose-colored glasses. And because of me having that perspective, um, it has but been to my detriment. And then as I learned, because I had to be a fast learner, had to be. But my thing is never go back twice. You know, I was able to avoid certain things after the initial assault on me, and then getting assaulted again, and it wasn't taken care of because I wasn't living at my mother's house, and it was just a lot. So people walking around here dogging Cassie and other victims like myself is just ridiculous. But I know, had I been around the team, that wouldn't have happened. If I would have been around Cat and them, that wouldn't have happened either. And I was just glad to be enjoy the music, to enjoy the energy, blessed that Prince has made it out. You know, I'm praying that nobody tries him, because he is starting a new leaf, and he know what he did to his community. He had 34 years to reminisce about that. So, he went from Supreme Team, which nobody is really talking about, his organization that he created called Redeem Team, whereas they're creating an organization and a foundation so that they could try to save our youth and deter them from selling drugs and killing their own communities, and giving them opportunities to do something else. And that's really been my vision too, because me starting out in hip hop so early, and I, had lived in a household where my mother dealt with mental illness, because she was essayed, I believe, at the age of 12. And I believe she might have been 13. I forgot what my oldest brother said. But yeah, she had a baby very young by a 29-year-old man, raped my mother. Well, raped her. raped her, and this was down south. And unfortunately, they always ostracized the victim. And he was incarcerated, but however, living in small towns, judgmental. Um, my brother's paternal side of his family didn't want to be bothered with him. They ostracized him, for a long time. It was a lot that they went through. My mother didn't have a time to grow. And then when she came up here to stay with her in Long Island, she settled in Long Island, and she was staying with her aunt, one of the Aunt Cazetta in Great Neck. And that's when they were doing domestic work. And she must have met my middle brother's father. And I think he might have been married. Who knows what was going on, but I know that my mother had a problem with being essayed very early on, and it kept happening. And then she met my dad, and my dad was about his business. What exactly his other side business was, because my mother came from North Carolina, my dad came from Georgia, and he worked in North Shore Hospital as a porter, and then he did some side gigs, but he was a legend in his own right. He was the type of man, he had a very violent temper. He would cut your hand before you could even get your blinky. And he was cool with Pop Freeman. I don't know what their business was, but I know my dad didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he didn't do any drugs, none of that. So in this live, I know I went on a little tangent, but yeah, I was glad, to know that, damn, if I would have kind of stayed close to XYZ, but it could have went anywhere. Could have went anywhere, and I believe in second chances. And Prince is old and his whole crew, but I'm gonna tell you one thing. What I always knew was they was fine, always good looking, good looking. And to see them, with the hats and their suits on, and I like seeing men like that. And, seeing that, that they survived, and how, Prince got that love, because I know he did some good things too, as well as bad. But we all do good and bad things, right? But it's to the extent, and he paid his dues. He really has. And, for him to be given back to the youth, and that was one of my visions as well, because, I live in Brooklyn now, but I hung out all over. So I was one of those females as a teenager that got a lot of passes. I'm short, but I was like kind of like my dad too. And I tried my best not to be like him, because my mother always, um, I didn't even know. I looked like didn't have no damn neck. Compared me to my dad, and I think she didn't like me because I reminded her of him, and I was a little different because I was born breech, and I used to have tantrums as a little girl. But I believe I survived some hard things, but I wasn't unscathed. And people will say, "Oh, Prince did this, Cat did this, Brian Gibbs did that." Like I said, I know a lot. I know a lot of them. You know, um, but I never, got any substances from them. I think my cousin Jamaica, when I was younger, like an early teenager, he got some weed. I remember the time, boy, oh boy, we smoked so much damn weed at one of his girlfriends, one of many girlfriends, down on New York Boulevard, Shirley. And then I think they were jamming in 48 Park or 41 somewhere. And I went out there and I moved that damn crowd. Then when I got back to that kids shelter, I had to go to the infirmary because I was calling calling Hurl for the simple fact that that old English 800 was nothing to play with, But anything else, no. It was those DJs that put me in harm's way, and it impacted me, and it impacted my daughter that's now deceased. And there's a lot of evil and wicked people in this world. I've seen a lot too. I have had to rescue people. I've watched, movements. I've watched wives act like they days and their husband is holding a damn young teenager's waist trying to convince her. You know, hip hop, when we was in the park and the block parties and the house parties, and then we went to the clubs, the Fantasia, the Fog House, and that's another thing. They talk about the damn Fantasia. Oh, she couldn't have been there, but you're not talking about Future Sounds. LL not talking about it either. Because I remember one time I didn't pass the mic to him, and there used to be a rule that, don't pass the mic unless you instructed to do so. And he was young. I got him by a couple of years. And he tapped me, why you didn't pass the mic? And I said, because they didn't tell me to pass the mic to you, you know? But they never talk about future sounds, ebony sounds, unique sounds. And, we had our own ballers in our own right too. You had Farmer's Crew, you had Murdoch Crew, you had Hollis Crew, and I was cool with everybody, you know. Even the second time when I got violated, staying at that lady house. If I could just turn back the hands of time, I got more damage living there than anywhere else. And that's why I've always instilled in my daughters, like, be careful who you say is a friend in the company you keep. Because everybody is not well wishers for you, you know. And they're just looking, they smiling in your face, and all the time they want to take your place, the backstabbers, and that's the truth, you know. Um, yeah, and when, these older guys couldn't control you, trying to manipulate, it's very cunning the way that they operate. It really is. They build your trust, and then they look and see when and sees the opportunity to switch up on you. See, I was trying to finish up my degree in the Bronx, and so a lot of stuff was going on. And I'm from Queens, but when my cousin must have got arrested and we lost contact with one another once I had moved, and then I had found out he was, into the H, and he was mainlining. And I told him I was so hurt and so disappointed. You know, I really was, because that was my dude. I was there when he got into a fist fight. It was over his name, too. A lot of different images. I remember when a lot, a lot. So I was there. I have my own story. Everybody got a story. Everybody have their own rap history. I've been afforded to know a lot of people, and I've been, doing it as a hobby because I can't work. Um, I have injuries, I have medical issues, and I'm raising my two grandchildren who have special needs, and, just dealing with the unaccountability of my daughter's transition, and then my godson's um, unaliving 6 weeks later, and trying to adapt to a normal society after you're accustomed to surviving and survival to the fittest, and then you go into the corporate world. And I used to work for a big law firm, and I learned in college how you can suppress you know traumas, and when you have a bunch of traumas, they become complex and PTSD, and then you have the wrong people advising you, telling you, oh, you shouldn't do this, and you stuff it inside, and then all of a sudden something triggers your memory, because I no longer self-medicate. And people go around this guy off and on with this same girl that don't like me and that didn't want me to be successful, and she told me that out of her own mouth. They went around slandering and defaming my character, which wasn't true, you know. And they had me in court, and I got them in court. Yeah, yeah. But it's a shame that they'll ruin, they'll blacklist you. And it's not only in the music industry. Like I was saying, I eventually had to leave my good job because of the hours. And when I had finally escaped from Astoria, Queens, that was a bad move on their recommendation. And I thought it would be a safe haven. And I remember that building because we stopped there to get a little bleaky while going to the T connection. And these guys are still steady, you know, not telling the truth, and then convincing me to join this girl group. Oh, I have to breathe because I can imagine what Cassie is going through. And she's pregnant. She's reliving all of those different things. Like I relive quite constantly, things that happen, and then now what occurred with my daughter. And all of that is connected with me in the music industry and the people that I was around. And me having to leave my daughter's father, you know, that made it very challenging. Also, having to leave my good job because their area was Title VII, um, the labor union, also sexual harassment, sexual discrimination. And then they were having cases and things that I was involved in. And I started out of nowhere because I had suppressed so much, and I blocked things out in order to cope and for it to be my safety mechanism. That I got to a place where I was getting sick. I was going through emotional, physical problems, and I had to resign from my job. But I wish that I would have told them back then, but they didn't have like the statute of limitation may have ran out to, take any action. And then also the hours, sometimes you got stuck, and I was always worried about my oldest daughter, but yeah, ironically. And there's so many different type of people in the dynamics and what they're into. And you know like I said, people talk about the team and all of them, but all of them, wasn't, bad people. They were just trying to survive. And unfortunately, I believe political figures, they do a lot of things and put a lot of things in, make our communities very desperate, you know, and they try to ensure that there'll never be a Tulsa again, you know. So, and also from my experience, once I went to the city and you know, trying to survive on a whole new leaf and not being impulsive and tearing somebody's behind up, you know, because certain things is in your DNA. And I should have, this one guy, you know, he had an agenda, and it's just so very similar to what goes on in the street, um, that ruthlessness, the backstabbing, the the addiction to power, money, and wanting everyone else to be subservient to them, and you got to be in their cliques. Well, I've always been a rebel with a cause. Well, sometimes without a cause in my youth, but now I'm a rebel with a cause for the simple fact that I've endured a lot. I can imagine what so many other victims have endured, like, you know, being lured and preyed upon, and, you know, someone saying, oh, bring a friend over. Oh, she's an artist. Oh, I'll work with them. And then, you know, whatever happens, like, you know, you have to have some kind of intimacy in order for to make some music, and then once they're finished, it's like you tossed out intact like trash. And then also it's the ideal that they make money off of you. You know, it's like the P&H, you know, and unbeknownst, and you take a lot of people's innocence. And I wonder about quite a few artists that have not only worked with these guys, but have worked with various different artists, because there's so many egocentric, and it's like parallel when it comes to city and state jobs. And what I find is what we're doing to ourselves as a community. We're tearing ourselves down, whether or not it be with substances or it be with the narcissistic way when it comes to power. Like, for instance, also the mayor of New York City. Now, I knew when I seen him some years ago at a particular event, I said, damn, he looked familiar. And then when I seen the younger pictures of him, I happened to notice that he used to hang out with my cousin Jamaica. And, you know, I had first went to him because usually I don't ask nobody for help, because the way I had to survive, I had to depend on me, because you couldn't trust nobody. Once my cousin was gone, I trusted them because they was on the up and up. And my cousin Honcho, when I was with Atomic Sounds, and I had that kind of protection, these cats didn't even know who the hell my family members were, who I was connected with. You know, they didn't ask, they didn't even bother. You know, they figure, you know, they these high powered DJs and entitlement and somebody younger. And it seems as though that everybody that's not saying anything, or they, you know, didn't see anything wrong with it, even though they were underage. Like, I've seen with I think it's the National Museum, people getting all of these, you know, awards. Not to say that they ain't take no hits for the team, but I think I took so many more, and I was out before a whole lot of them. And you know, it's no jealousy. I think that people should get what they're entitled to, because my mindset is whatever's meant for me, I'm gonna have it anyway. I'm gonna be blessed anyhow. But yeah, this group, the Mercedes ladies. I remember, their DJ being over there underage. Cause I asked, how old is she? Yeah, I know her from seeing her around and me being with AJ and different people that are no longer here that definitely would vouch for me. Powwow, may he rest in peace. You know, um, at the T Connection before I even went up there with those guys. So, it just seems like they're being rewarded, but they're not looking at the overall impact that this is having within our community and the lineage line. And that's really, the slave masters' dent. It's systemic things from slavery. Because, like I shared, it happened to my mother, it happened to me, and someone in my family. And, one of my daughters had to go through domestic violence situation. It's just a lot. So, me being the spiritual person I am, I look at it as, all right, it's an ancestral line that has to be, cleared. And I'm always thinking about the community. And it's to the deterrence. And everybody has different coping mechanisms and different mindsets. But it seems as though, a lot of people and men are zesty. And it's been that way for a long time. And I really believe since the beginning of what they call hip hop. So if the Bronx want to claim that kind of culture, well, y'all take it. You'll take that culture. But the other boroughs, we were doing our own things. And I believe that hip hop should just be um, acknowledged as New York City and beyond because Sequence, I was hanging out with Angie Stone in 2016. And, by going through so much and then learning how to maneuver and how to survive, you read the room, you pick up the energy, you check out what people are doing, what they're saying. And I was like, nah, I saw what was going on. And power, money, and greed is the downfall. It's the downfall in the music and film industry. It's the downfall within the workforce, whether or not be private sector or public sector. And that's what's going on from experience. But I'm really glad to say that, I'm the woman I am. But some days I'm upset because I lost my daughter. I lost my godson. People have been promoted for covering up stuff. And, and the mayor of New York City is a damn sure a big disappointment, for us. So we got a lot to look at. And, far as Prince being home, and he said he ain't trying to go back. And I'm praying that he don't never go back. But I'm also praying that nobody try him either because, the culture has changed. You got so many different gatekeepers, like you got gatekeepers up there in the Bronx for that museum. And, they got their clique going on. And, they got some people that are going on with all of these different narratives. You got some people that really wasn't there that received all of this acknowledgement, especially even in St. Albans. And I'm saying, nigga, when was you here? And then I had to consult with other people, and they were saying he was a punk, he was a kid, he wasn't here. I was like, yeah, because I don't remember him. A lot of different aspects. What we do to backstab and cut one another's throat, that kind of climate is still here. And I think that that vibration is higher up than it has ever been, because look at our political figures, the crabs in the barrel. They don't want to see you evolve. And if they're in power, they want you to kiss their damn feet. They want you to bend over. They want to be able to have access. They want to, touch your behind, or they want to say something that's inappropriate. Then they don't know you from a can of paint. They don't know what kind of background you come from, and that you are non nonsense person, or you they kind of categorize me as being not rough around the edges. It's I'm tired. I'm tired. So I can't think of the word that I'm trying to express. Combative. That's what it is. Combative. And my take is I've had to survive and fight and advocate for myself, for my children, for my grandchildren. And that's just the way it is. And, in this climate, people want to be wrong and strong at the same time instead of implementing corrective action. So with this climate, you know, um, I hope that, Prince will continue to have positive people around him, and, you know, nobody try him, because the way I see Eric, because I didn't vote for him. I did not. I made that mistake with Letitia James, and my daughter's case was in the public advocate's office, and they had a backlog of 1,000 cases, and no one helped to get to the bottom of the F up with my daughter, and I was stuck holding the bag. And whereas I probably did fall apart, but I ain't had time to sit in it. But it did take a toll on me because I almost checked out. I was in the hospital. My throat had inflammation. It was closing up, you know, because I was just hit with so much, and I wasn't really expressing it because I had to be strong and I had to take care of a lot of business. And my grandchildren was my priority. Now I should have been accepted for retirement disability. But again, one of my nemesis, and one time I was waiting for him outside the damn hallmark because I was going to F him up, and I should have just did that and resigned from my job. But, trying to follow, quote, 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 what society says, which is a bunch of bull crap, and I don't feed into that, and I'm glad I don't. But I guess I wish I would have known what I know now. I would have done something different. I would have left early on, and when I got hurt the second year, the second time on the job, I should just, went out on retirement disability. But I was so worried about my daughter and my grandchildren, and hoping that, our folks that were employed to do a service would, you know, be efficient, but they didn't. And when I'm hysterical, of course, I lost my firstborn child, who, we lived in Astoria with a rat infested place, and then the guy was had a club there and sold substances, which the guy that referred me there and told me it was okay, knew that, and knew that could be a possibility that he would start selling it again. And that's what happened, and it was like hell. And then people think they do you favors and you owe them. No, I never liked them guys. Not like that. You think you with the hardest, crew in Queens, and come to find out they got a lot of shit with them. And they, the PPs. I ain't say no name, you know, but I'm in court with some guys right now, and I play to win. But I'm glad that I got a chance to, go out see Prince, see a lot of people, you know, I should say Prince and his men, you know, because they're not boys, they're men. And, you know, Nas and Jadakiss and my boy Eric B, because he know I've been down a long time. And he was like, yeah, I've been saying the same thing. I got to call him because every time I try to call him, he don't answer his phone, so I got to text him, you know. And I plan on doing some hobbies, and because I got to have a source of income, so I got to do it, you know, legally. You know, I have a source of income, but I need to have like a hobby, you know, and it's just not enough. So if you ever want to support this channel, my information is in the description for my PayPal and my Cash App. And also, I would like for everyone that comes through this channel and listen to this video, check out Prince's new organization and donate. You know, if you really want to support our brothers that have done wrong to the community, that have come back out and want to make their show of amends by healing the community or saving our youths, then support redeemteam.org. Again, that's Prince's organization, redeemteam.org. And at that, I'm Tam Behind the Mic. And I hope we chop it up another time soon. Peace, blessings, and light. Oh, thank you, Delilah. Thank you. I couldn't even see that people were in the chat. I'm so sorry. I'm glad you like my videos. I'm trying to, you know, build my channel and give some content. And I know I'll be going deep, but, you know, I'm just trying to get the followers and I want to help, you know, people, and I need to share my story. So I'm wishing you all the best. And let me see if I could share behind people, the audacity that these tired behind people had the nerve at my daughter's funeral try to solicit and pick up a girl with the ploy of wanting to work with them. And you know, when you've already had experiences and you keep putting your hand in the fire, I got burnt enough times. I would never ever, like I told them, you know, and I was nice about it when I had to, you know, let these people have it, individuals. You know, I didn't make a scene because I used to make a damn scene. And I said, damn, I should have did that. You just don't know how to be. You know, when you're trying to turn your life around and, you know, you trying to adjust to society that has negative connotation and negative intention, it makes it very, very challenging. You know, so I put Prince's organization. You could check it out. You could choose to donate. If you notice, it's in the backdrop here, redeemteam.org. You know, let's, you know, lift our brother up and hope and pray that nobody, you know, that, you know, things will be okay, you know. And I just wish him positive energy and protection. And, you know, Nas got him. I'm hoping that sooner or later, you know, I can have a hobby and be able to, you know, pitch my story, you know, and I got a hell of a story, and I know it's a series and documentary as well. So have a good night. Thanks for checking in. like, share, and subscribe to Tam Behind the Mic. I'll be glad when I'll be able to get all my stuff together. All right. See you later, YouTube troopers. Have a good night.